There is a food sitting in kitchens across the world right now that millions of people believe is protecting their health. Yet when consumed incorrectly, this same food may be quietly contributing to joint deterioration that accumulates over years and decades. The irony is particularly cruel because this is a food that health-conscious individuals specifically choose as part of their wellness routines, eaten morning after morning with the sincere belief that they are doing something beneficial for their bodies. What most people do not realize is that how you eat something can matter just as much as what you eat, and this principle becomes critically important for adults over 50, whose joints are already operating with diminished reserves and increased vulnerability to inflammatory damage. The food in question is oatmeal, a breakfast staple praised for its fiber content and heart-healthy properties by nutritionists and health organizations worldwide. Oatmeal itself is not inherently harmful, and this is not a warning to eliminate it from your diet entirely. However, the specific ways that most people prepare and consume their oatmeal, the additions they make, the form they purchase, and the manner in which they eat it may be creating inflammatory responses that gradually wear down the cartilage and other delicate structures within your joints. When you consider that many adults eat oatmeal every single day as part of their morning routine, the cumulative impact of these mistakes becomes a matter of serious concern for long-term mobility and comfort. This exploration will examine why joints become more vulnerable after the age of 50, and then count down 5 specific mistakes people commonly make with their oatmeal, from the 5th most significant to the most damaging. Each of these errors represents a pattern that, when repeated daily over months and years, may contribute to increased inflammation and accelerated joint aging. The information presented draws from general scientific understanding of how the body processes different nutrients and responds to various dietary components. Understanding these connections could potentially spare you from unnecessary pain and limitations in the years ahead, simply by adjusting habits you may never have thought to question. The human joint relies on cartilage, a smooth tissue covering bone ends, to enable pain-free movement through a sophisticated cushioning and gliding mechanism. In younger individuals, cartilage maintains itself through continuous breakdown and rebuilding, but after 50, this balance shifts unfavorably as repair rates decline while degradation continues or accelerates. Inflammation plays a central role in this process, with chronic low-grade inflammation becoming increasingly common as regulatory systems lose precision with age. The foods you eat directly influence your inflammatory status, making dietary choices increasingly consequential for joint health as you grow older. This connection between diet and joint integrity becomes more pronounced with each passing year, as the body's ability to compensate for dietary insults diminishes steadily. The digestive system also undergoes significant changes after 50 that affect how nutrients are absorbed and how the body responds to different foods. Production of stomach acid and digestive enzymes decreases, the gut microbiome becomes less diverse, and intestinal permeability may increase with age. These changes mean that foods tolerated well in earlier decades may begin causing problems, and the form in which food is consumed becomes more important than ever. A breakfast eaten incorrectly every morning for 10 years represents thousands of opportunities for subtle inflammatory insults to accumulate within joint tissues. The gut-joint connection is now recognized as a significant pathway through which dietary choices influence the health of cartilage, synovial membranes, and surrounding supportive structures. The regenerative capacity of the body diminishes substantially after 50, with the cells responsible for tissue repair becoming less numerous and less active. Hormonal changes reduce the body's ability to rebuild damaged structures, and blood flow to joint tissues may decrease, limiting nutrient delivery for maintenance. This reduced capacity for repair means that the margin for error in daily habits becomes smaller, and insults that would have been easily absorbed in younger years now leave lasting marks. Prevention becomes far more valuable than any attempt at repair because cartilage has extremely limited regeneration capacity in adult life. The chondrocytes embedded within cartilage matrix work continuously to maintain tissue integrity, but their efforts are increasingly overwhelmed when chronic inflammation persists. All these factors combine to create a situation where joints after 50 are operating with reduced reserves and increased vulnerability to dietary influences. What this means practically is that daily habits with minimal impact in your 20s or 30s can now contribute to measurable joint deterioration. Understanding these vulnerabilities provides the foundation for examining specific mistakes that transform a healthy breakfast into a source of chronic inflammatory stress on your joints. The following countdown identifies these errors in ascending order of significance, building toward the single most damaging practice that affects countless adults every morning. Number 5 involves choosing instant oatmeal over less processed forms, a decision driven by convenience that may carry significant consequences for joint health. Instant oatmeal has been extensively processed to reduce cooking time, with oat groats rolled thin, pre-cooked, and often pulverized into fragments that dissolve quickly in hot water. This processing destroys the structural integrity that would otherwise slow digestion and moderate sugar release into your bloodstream, creating what researchers describe as a high glycemic response characterized by rapid blood sugar spikes followed by sharp declines. The speed at which glucose enters your bloodstream from instant oatmeal is dramatically faster than from steel-cut or traditional rolled varieties, and this difference has meaningful implications for inflammatory signaling throughout your body. These blood sugar fluctuations trigger insulin release and subsequent inflammatory signaling that can affect tissues throughout your body, including the delicate structures within joints. Studies have suggested that consistently high glycemic eating patterns are associated with increased markers of inflammation, and the inflammatory molecules produced can stimulate enzymes that break down cartilage matrix. Over months and years of daily instant oatmeal consumption, this pattern may contribute to the chronic inflammation that accelerates joint degradation in vulnerable individuals. The convenience that makes instant oatmeal appealing becomes considerably less attractive when viewed against the backdrop of progressive joint damage that may result from its daily consumption. Steel-cut oats retain their structural integrity and require significant digestive effort to break down, while even traditional rolled oats maintain enough structure to slow digestion compared to instant varieties. The fiber in less processed oats feeds beneficial gut bacteria that produce anti-inflammatory compounds, further supporting joint health. Taking extra time to prepare less processed oats or preparing them overnight represents a simple change that can reduce the inflammatory burden on your joints without sacrificing the benefits of this whole grain breakfast. Many people find that overnight oats prepared the evening before actually save time in the morning, while providing superior nutritional value and a gentler impact on blood sugar regulation. Number 4, concerns adding excessive amounts of dried fruit, a topping choice that seems perfectly healthy but can significantly increase inflammatory impact when used liberally. Dried fruits are concentrated sugar sources stripped of water content, and while fresh fruits contain fiber and water that moderate absorption, drying removes these protective elements. Many commercial dried fruits contain added sugars beyond natural levels, and even unsweetened varieties are so concentrated that a small handful can contain as much sugar as candy amplifying the glycemic impact of your morning meal. The perception that dried fruit represents a wholesome addition to oatmeal leads many people to add generous portions without considering the sugar load they are creating. Research has illuminated connections between sugar consumption and joint inflammation, with excess sugar associated with increased production of inflammatory cytokines that promote inflammation throughout the body. These signaling molecules can stimulate cartilage-degrading enzymes and accelerate joint tissue breakdown. Additionally, high sugar intake contributes to weight gain, placing mechanical stress on weight-bearing joints that compounds the inflammatory damage occurring at the cellular level. The combination of chemical inflammation from sugar metabolism and mechanical stress from additional body weight creates a particularly hostile environment for joint tissues already compromised by age-related changes. A more joint-friendly approach involves using fresh or frozen berries instead of dried fruit, as these options provide similar vitamins and antioxidants with far less concentrated sugar. If dried fruit is used, limiting amounts to a small sprinkling rather than a generous handful helps moderate sugar impact. Reading labels to avoid varieties with added sugars is essential, and though adjusting to less sweetness requires patience, this change is worthwhile when considering the potential cost of chronic inflammation on long-term joint health. Fresh berries also provide additional water content that supports hydration, which is itself important for maintaining the synovial fluid that lubricates and nourishes joint structures. Number 3 involves using sweetened plant milks without checking labels, a mistake increasingly common as more people choose alternatives to dairy. Oat milk, almond milk, and similar products often contain significant added sugars, with a single cup of sweetened vanilla almond milk sometimes containing 12 grams or more, equivalent to 3 teaspoons of table sugar. When sweetened milk is used to prepare oatmeal, the sugar content rises substantially before any toppings are added, and most consumers remain unaware of this hidden contribution to their total intake. The proliferation of plant milk options in grocery stores has created a confusing landscape where products positioned as healthy choices may actually undermine joint health through their sugar content. The marketing of plant-based alternatives emphasizes positive attributes, while added sugar content receives far less prominence, creating false confidence among health-conscious consumers. This hidden sugar adds to whatever comes from the oatmeal itself, dried fruit, and other sweeteners, potentially transforming what seems like a virtuous breakfast into a high-sugar meal with significant inflammatory potential. The cumulative effect over years of daily consumption can substantially increase the inflammatory burden experienced by joint tissues. Many people who have switched to plant milks for perceived health benefits would be dismayed to learn that their choice may be contributing to joint problems they had hoped to prevent. Seeking unsweetened varieties eliminates this hidden sugar source while still providing the creamy texture that makes plant milks appealing for oatmeal preparation. The taste difference is noticeable initially, but adaptation typically occurs within 1 to 2 weeks, and water remains a perfectly acceptable option that eliminates any concern about hidden sugars. For adults over 50 concerned about joint health, eliminating unnecessary added sugars represents one of the most straightforward dietary changes with potentially meaningful benefits for long-term mobility. Taking a few extra seconds to read nutrition labels before purchasing plant milks can prevent years of unintended inflammatory exposure. Number 2 addresses eating oatmeal too quickly without proper chewing, a behavioral pattern that seems harmless but has significant implications for digestion and inflammation. Oatmeal's soft texture makes it easy to swallow spoonfuls rapidly with minimal chewing, especially during busy mornings when time is limited. However, proper chewing initiates digestion through salivary enzyme release and prepares the stomach for incoming food, and skipping this phase places greater burden on the digestive system while potentially contributing to intestinal permeability. The mechanical act of chewing also sends signals to the rest of the digestive tract, priming it for the arrival of food and optimizing the conditions for proper nutrient absorption. When the intestinal barrier is compromised, food particles and bacterial products can enter the bloodstream and trigger immune responses, manifesting as systemic inflammation. Research has shown that eating quickly is associated with higher inflammatory markers even when caloric intake is identical, and the stress response accompanying rushed eating elevates cortisol, further promoting inflammation and interfering with tissue repair. For adults with already diminished digestive efficiency, the impact of fast eating may be particularly pronounced and damaging over time. The hurried pace of modern life has normalized eating behaviors that are fundamentally incompatible with optimal digestive function and inflammatory regulation. Slowing the eating process requires conscious effort, but becomes natural with practice. Setting aside 15 to 20 minutes for breakfast without distractions, putting down the spoon between bites, and chewing thoroughly, even when food is soft, all help activate proper digestive responses. Paying attention to temperature, texture, and taste transforms eating from rushed refueling into a mindful experience, supporting proper digestion and reducing the inflammatory consequences that may otherwise affect your joints. This behavioral change costs nothing and requires no special equipment, yet it may yield significant benefits for joint health when practiced consistently over time. Number 1. The most significant mistake is adding honey or maple syrup as a daily sweetener under the assumption that these natural alternatives are harmless or beneficial. This practice is extraordinarily common because these sweeteners are marketed as healthier than refined sugar, yet their fundamental impact on blood sugar and inflammation is remarkably similar. Honey is primarily fructose and glucose. Maple syrup is predominantly sucrose, and the body processes these essentially identically to table sugar, with all the inflammatory consequences that follow. The natural origin of these sweeteners creates a health halo that obscures their metabolic reality and encourages overconsumption that would never occur with white sugar. The small amounts of trace nutrients in honey or maple syrup are insufficient to offset the inflammatory impact of the sugars themselves, and a single tablespoon of honey contains approximately 17 grams of sugar, with many people using more. High sugar intake promotes advanced glycation end products that damage tissues, feeds pro-inflammatory gut bacteria, triggers insulin spikes, stimulating inflammatory cytokine production, and contributes to weight gain, placing mechanical stress on joints. The daily sweetener habit may seem innocent, but its cumulative impact through multiple inflammatory pathways is substantial and concerning. Research suggests that the dose-response relationship between sugar consumption and inflammation is continuous, meaning that every additional gram of sugar contributes incrementally to inflammatory burden. What makes this mistake particularly damaging is the frequency of occurrence and the false health consciousness accompanying it. People adding honey to oatmeal often believe they are making a healthy choice, continuing the practice for decades without question. The silent accumulation of damage reveals itself only when joint stiffness and pain become impossible to ignore, by which point years of inflammatory insults have already compromised cartilage that cannot regenerate. Breaking this habit requires adjusting expectations about how breakfast should taste, but unsweetened oatmeal with modest fresh fruit can be satisfying once the palate adapts, offering substantial benefits for joint health. The transition period typically lasts only 2 to 3 weeks, after which the natural flavors of properly prepared oatmeal become genuinely enjoyable. Beyond avoiding these mistakes, incorporating anti-inflammatory spices into your oatmeal may actively support joint health when consumed regularly over time. Cinnamon, ginger, and turmeric contain compounds that research suggests may help modulate inflammatory responses at the cellular level. Adding a teaspoon of cinnamon or fresh grated ginger transforms breakfast from a neutral event into an opportunity to support joint tissues, with consistent daily consumption potentially producing cumulative benefits that occasional use cannot achieve. These spices have been used in traditional medicine systems for centuries, and modern research is beginning to validate some of the mechanisms through which they may exert protective effects on various body tissues, including joints. This approach works within a broader context of joint supportive behaviors, including gentle movement, healthy weight maintenance, adequate hydration, and quality sleep. The spices enhance benefits from other healthy practices while not compensating for significant deficiencies elsewhere. Your morning oatmeal, prepared correctly and enhanced with anti-inflammatory additions, becomes a meaningful daily contribution to maintaining mobility and comfort as you age. The synergy between proper oatmeal preparation and anti-inflammatory spice additions creates a breakfast that actively supports rather than undermines the long-term health of your joints. The relationship between daily eating habits and long-term joint health deserves far more attention than it typically receives. The mistakes outlined here represent patterns that many engage in without awareness, and their cumulative nature means daily choices truly matter. The changes required are neither difficult nor expensive, and the adjustment period as your palate adapts to less sweetness is brief compared to the years of potential benefit for your joints. Each morning presents an opportunity to either support or stress your joint tissues, and the accumulated effect of thousands of breakfast decisions shapes the trajectory of joint aging over decades. Consider examining your breakfast habits with honest assessment, questioning whether convenience and sweetness are worth the potential inflammatory cost. The choices made tomorrow morning will be repeated hundreds of times over coming years, each repetition either supporting or undermining joint health. Your joints have carried you through decades of life and deserve the consideration that comes from eating wisely, transforming a daily routine into an act of protection for structures essential to your mobility and independence. The knowledge you now possess about oatmeal preparation and consumption empowers you to make informed decisions that may preserve joint function and comfort for years to come.